So we've got another episode of the Everyday Patriot podcast. We're on episode 6 or
could be 6, could be 7.
Depends on when we post it, right? Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about finances and marriage. Mm-hmm. So you're married.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you guys talk about finances a lot?
Probably the most. Out of anything.
Yeah. So one of our big things is, that's the biggest drive for divorce in marriages is finances and money talks.
Yep.
So do you guys have like a set like budget and plan that you guys work off of, or like how do you guys like bring that up and talk about it?
So we have a really structured budget that we've put together, but we don't really follow it that much. It's funny because it's almost like calories, like in fitness, like calories in, calories out. Like
you know what you got to do.
Yep. And so we have like a lot of investments. Obviously, we've talked about some things on the podcast, but we basically make sure we pay our bills. We put the money in our investments, IRA, 401k, even just cash savings. And then it's almost like whatever's left over is just there. So it's not really strict, but there's structure to it.
Gotcha. Sure. Okay.
What do you guys do?
Yeah, we do kind of the same thing, right? So we have the finances that are basically, all the money's coming in, and as it goes out, we use credit cards just to basically rack up points, and then each month the credit card just gets paid off. So Ryan's got one, I've got one, and we can watch the spending on each one. We don't have like a strict budget, and that's definitely something that we need to create, because we've noticed that a budget, kind of like you said, right? Calories in versus calories out. You can know what you need to spend, but if you're not on it, then things kind of just go wherever they want to go, right? So I'll tell Ryan like, hey, we're gonna budget for like $200, and then it'll be $50 here and $20 here and $30 here, and then all of a sudden it's like $800 by the end of 2 weeks and not even a month. So
I feel like I get a little bit nervous about people. About people being on too tight of a budget, because personally, I don't like when it seems like people are like being stingy.
Right.
But also, I don't, what's that guy who says like, we use credit cards for everything, pay them off every single month, get the points, because we look at a P&L for work, but everything's profit margin. So if you can make 2%, 3%, 5%, if they're doing like a little bonus on the card, if you want to use this one for groceries or whatever it is.
Now, the main thing there is to pay it off at the end of each month.
Right. But what's the guy, Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey. Yeah. So Ryan listens to him a lot about everything. And there's definitely some things that I agree with him on.
For sure.
But then there's some things that I don't necessarily have the same views. And that's the same thing here, right? Nothing that we say is financial advice. This is stuff that we have decided works for us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, he says like, don't use credit cards, don't use anything that'll put you into debt.
I like Dave Ramsey. Like I like CrossFit.
It's there.
There's some good things there, but a lot of the stuff, like I've seen his episodes and little clips on Facebook and stuff, and then some of it I'm just like, what? It's almost too strict and too simplified that it's for someone who maybe has no knowledge of how finances work, and they need something to really hold their hand to get them out of debt.
Right.
100%. I think his strategies they're surefire, because you can't really screw up.
They're sound, yeah.
Your credit score won't go down anymore if you do what he says.
Yeah.
But it doesn't also have the ability to like go up,
maximize, and you're not really, and there's this is probably going to create some controversy on this statement right here, but it doesn't allow you to like live your life, right? Yeah. And it doesn't allow you to enjoy your life. Now, the reason why I say the controversy is because, some people could say like, oh, well, you're going farther into debt if you do this and that. Mm-hmm. There is a guy that I really like to listen to. His name is Grant Cardone.
Yes.
Now I don't agree with everything he says.
Right. Me neither.
But I like his principles. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, right? You gotta do what's best for you. But for something that he says, he kind of goes on the very opposite end, right? And he'll say like,
leverage your debt,
leverage it, and it's okay to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt as long as somebody else is paying it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, he talks about going into, like multi-million-dollar deals and real estate and making sure that, if you do go into that, somebody else is paying the rent and they're basically paying all the mortgage on that debt. And then you're taking stuff off the top, right?
It's very strategic.
It's very strategic. And obviously that's more for the business minded. Dave Ramsey is more for,
I almost look at it like Dave Ramsey is like how my parents like did things because they saved and savings and money like in your mattress.
Yeah.
It's
like how
security.
Yeah. It's like how much can I save at the end of the month? Right. So we definitely don't do that. We don't, for us, I know we send memes back and forth and it's kind of funny sometimes, I'll look at my, checking account and there'll be like a couple $100 there and I'm like, oh, I'm broke.
Yeah.
And then I'll look at my brokerage account and there's like a lot of money in there.
Brokerage account?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's
yeah, no. So I don't touch anything in the brokerage account. I have yet to pull any money out. There's money that goes in every single month.
Yep.
And that's for later John,
yeah.
and later John might be a month from now.
Yeah.
If things get really tight, it might be 10 years from now. Who knows? But that's for a later time.
You're paying yourself first.
Absolutely. And so there's definitely a budget that goes into how much money is going into the brokerage account. And there's certain things that might, maybe be difference of opinion for people listening. They might say, oh, well, make sure you pay all your bills first. Make sure you do all this. I actually put money in the brokerage account first. Mm-hmm. And then, the credit card goes next and, all the bills. But it's definitely me first.
Yeah. I think that's an important way to look at it because people, they just like, at least for me, this is my personal opinion, but I'm not working just to get by. I'm working to get ahead. Right. And if you're not actively doing something to get ahead, then you're not going to get ahead.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And especially in marriage, like I know Chelsea has a different kind of, we're very similar in ways when it comes to money, but we're also very different. She's much more of a saver and I'm more of a, let's take risk. Let's do this, with no risk, there's no reward. Right. So it's an interesting dynamic.
And that's funny because I think for us, it's for Ryan and I think it's very different, right? I think Ryan is more of the spender, only because she hasn't necessarily ever had to worry, not in a bad way, but she's never had to worry about, making sure that certain things are paid on time. Because we've got that taken care of,
right?
And she doesn't necessarily look at a credit card statement and say like, oh, I've already spent this much.
This is going to be tight, or like
because we've always got that cushion at the end of the day,
right?
And so I think one of the big things that maybe causes us some topics to discuss when it comes to finances is that we have this arbitrary budget, like you said, but then we never really follow it. And so, a couple weeks into the month, I'll be like, whoa, we're spending a little bit too much on this card, and then, from her standpoint, it's all like, well, we have this budget, but we don't really follow it. Mm-hmm. So what can I spend? What can't I spend?
It's hard when it's not defined.
It is hard when it's not defined. But, the good thing is, with us, I feel like we have really good open communication. She'll text me and, hey, I'm going to, Target, or I'm going to TJ Maxx, or I'm going to, this place or that place. And, or I'm redoing the girls' room or something like, right. What's the budget that I can spend? And I'll say like, oh, let's just keep it under $500, or let's keep it under $1,000 for this, or, whatever. And, I think she's really good with that. Like she can find things under there. Yeah. But it's all about the communication part.
I think in a way, and I know we kind of bring this back to work stuff, a lot, but in a way I see myself as like a big picture manager, like almost like a club manager, you can say. in our household.
Was that a plug right there?
Maybe possible. But Chelsea doesn't necessarily have that experience to be like forecasting.
Right.
So like we forecast budgets. We know, hey, I know if you ask me, I have four vehicles. I can tell you exactly when the registration is due, how much the registration is. It's very expensive here in California. And even when they send it out. So like my registration for my Blazer comes up in December. They send it out in September. So I'm going to pay it in September. So like just that forecasting out, it's like a big picture thing.
Now, is this all on Excel?
No,
it's just all in your head.
in my brain.
And some people can work like that.
Keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Some people can work like that. I think that if you're definitely, if your finances are together and or you're working as a team, there needs to be at least somebody like you that can know when that's taken care of. But the open communication, I think, is big. Now
you don't want surprises.
You definitely don't. There was that thing that we were talking about a couple weeks back, but there was a survey that went out that said 98% of Americans or 95% of Americans cannot afford a $300 surprise.
Yeah.
They just can't, whether it be tires on the car or
that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
It just something.
It's a ticket. Yeah. That's a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I just think it's kind of interesting that that there's so many people that can't afford that.
Right.
And to me, whether or not you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck, at that point, you definitely are.
You are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we have it built in. I'm sure you do too, but just like some reserve for emergency.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always felt this way. I moved out when I was 18, and I moved out into an apartment that was, at the time I could afford it. And then throughout my lease, finances started to change. I was 18, I was still learning, right? I bought a car, I bought like all of these things. And then all of a sudden it was like I was running out of money before I ran out of month.
Yeah.
Right. And then I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? So one of the big things that I learned from that was to be able to say, hey, if anything happened today, how long can I live?
Yep.
Without worrying about finances.
Yeah.
And just everything that's happened with the closures,
basically keeping the same level of lifestyle, maybe a little reduction. Obviously you'd go into like kind of protection mode, but
sure.
Yeah.
But you're not stressed out. You're not worried about it, and my goal is to stay stress-free, worry-free, and be able to live for at least a year.
Yeah.
And that includes rent.
They suggest 6 months, but a year is amazing. Yeah.
The only reason I feel like that is because of what's in the brokerage account. So if needed, right? That's the emergency fund. If needed, we can tap into that. We can be good for a year plus and just be good. But, having your backup plan and reserves for, what happens if.
Well, that's the thing. I never would have thought, I'd be out of work for any amount of time. It's just not something that was in my game plan. And, I found other avenues, construction and stuff. But it's crazy to think that we're going on 2 years of pandemic or whatever. And unemployment just ended for some people. But it's just, you said a year. Maybe we need 2 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. You just really never know. Right. And so, that's the thing that I would highly recommend if you're listening and you're making a plan, is to have a plan for what you can do and how long you can live.
Even if it's $50 a month, you just stack away and you don't look at it. Yeah. One thing I know, and we're getting a little bit away from like budgeting, but, is when there's tons of studies, when people get a raise, they typically increase their spending with that raise.
That's true.
And it's just, let's say you go from $50,000 a year to $60,000 a year. You got $10,000 more. Let's take a good ass vacation.
Yeah.
But really, the way I think about it is I probably would put, let's say I went from 50 to 60. I'd probably put $5,000 of that away where I wouldn't even see it come off the top. One strategy I use specifically right now is I have 2 bank accounts. 90% of my paycheck is direct deposited into one. 10% is direct deposited into another bank account. I don't even have the app on my phone. So
that's good.
I know how much is in there because I know how often I get paid, and I know the percentage that goes in there. It's just numbers. That's what I do. I know how much is in there, but I don't have the app on my phone, and I know that's just an additional layer of security that I have.
Again, what if?
Yep.
Right? Just what if? There's the saying that you can never manage. You're never really good at managing your finances until you manage the money first, right? And so there's a lot of people, just like you said, they can't make it on a $50,000 income. And then they're like, oh, if I just made a little more, if I just made 60, if I just made 70. Well, the problem is you're going to change your lifestyle to fit the income.
You get that extra Starbucks or breakfast or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And then you're living paycheck to paycheck on 50 grand. You're living paycheck to paycheck on 70 grand.
Moving to that bigger place.
You will, I've seen it happen time and time again. You will make that $100,000 salary and you will still be living paycheck to paycheck because you can't manage the finances from a smaller scale, right? And I think it's funny because we just go back to the field that we're in, right? We started a smaller scale, right? And then once you can manage that, you can manage a bigger scale. But
more moving parts.
It's just so much harder. You get at 100 grand is $8,333 a month that is coming in, right? Obviously before taxes. But if you've got that coming in,
let's say you live in Florida, you might get it all.
You might get it all, and then if you live in California, you might get $2 grand.
Yeah.
But after all the money that's coming in, you will spend more of it if you're not good with finances.
Yeah. So what's something that you do in your marriage to help? I guess like have those conversations that might be maybe tough or like. I mean, you got a car. You got new cars, right?
Yeah, we got 2 new cars. One of the conversations was, Ryan had a SUV, she had a sedan. She needed to have an SUV for the kids.
For sure.
Definitely a need. And fitting a stroller and 2 kids, plus if you're driving anybody else in a sedan, it's very difficult. So we went out and decided to get her a SUV. We had a very strict budget. She knew what car she wanted, and there's different trim levels of the car. And, I think for this car, she got an Explorer. I think there's like 8 or 9 trim levels. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I grew up with Explorers. So an Explorer to me was 30, 40 grand. I don't know. Yeah. They're going for like upwards of 90 for the Platinums now. I'm like, oh man, that's ridiculous.
You're getting old.
But, so we had a plan for that. We had a budget and, we definitely stuck within the budget. But while we were shopping, one thing that Ryan was paying attention to each and every time was, well, do we need this? Well, do we need, do you need the leather seats? Do you need this? Do you need that? And I think the cool thing was she was thinking long-term. She was thinking, well, regardless of whatever additional was in the car, she was thinking, well, that's going to raise my payment X amount, and that's going to do this, and that's going to. So if I just took these 2 things off, that's $50 or that's $100, right? Yeah. And so we ended up finding the perfect car for her. There were some non-negotiables that she had, and we found the perfect car. And it was, I might be a couple dollars off, but I think it was $15 off of our budget.
That's crazy.
So it landed right where it should have landed, and it was perfect.
But some people would say, "Oh, wow, that's so lucky." But like you did that strategically, and she did that strategically because.
And I got to give her credit because I was looking at the cars and, I'm definitely more of an emotional buyer. Yeah. So I went there and I was like, wow, this car is sick. And so I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that's okay. We can swing this, and then she definitely brought it back and we stayed within budget. But, at the same time.
That's why you have a partnership. That's why you have a marriage, because you can balance each other.
Talk about it. Yeah. And so then at the same time, I didn't need a new car. I had a 2018 4Runner. It was brand new. Yeah. It didn't even have 40,000 miles on it yet.
Wheels, everything.
Lifted, the whole 9, right? But I knew that the goal was for her to get a new car. And, knowing the budgets, knowing everything that we have that we're working towards, I went in and I was able to get rid of my car, trade it in, get a different car.
I had a really good time, by the way.
It was with the chip shortage and everything. So I got more money for my car. I got a brand new car, and just again, finances, was able to lease it instead of buy it. So I brought my payment down a little bit. And now with the 2 cars, I'm basically paying what my 4Runner was a month.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
2 cars, 2 brand new cars.
0 miles. Yeah.
0 miles on each one.
That's awesome.
So no, and it's all about, just working together to figure out how much money you can spend and what the budget is.
Well, and that's the thing, because every person is going to have their own emotional thing. I want to get a new dirt bike or gun or whatever. Like Chelsea might be like, listen, this is what we can work with. You can either wait, like she'll give me options. She'll be like, you can wait a couple months, save, a little more. And then there's things that she doesn't want that much, but, I try and get her to buy things, but, yeah, we just balance each other out that way.
I mean, you're trying to get her to buy more stuff.
Yeah.
But
to justify my stuff.
Hey, listen, if you buy this,
she knows it.
I can go buy another gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, I think Ryan's the same way. Ryan definitely, there's something that Ryan wants, and it's not going to be the cheapest thing in the world. I mean, we're talking 9, 10 grand. And that's the thing.
Another baby?
Well, that might be cheaper, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, so we're like budgeting this all in, and we're trying to figure out, and, she knows that it's a big dollar amount to spend. So we've been trying to kind of price it in, and we have this goal time frame of November, December, right around Christmas time. And we have that goal, but she also knows that if things start to move one way or the other, that we can either do it sooner or we push it back. And again, just communication, right? So
yeah, that's what it's all about.
So now you and Chelsea have been together forever.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any debt going into the marriage?
Nope.
So that's different, right? But there's a lot of people
with debt
that have debt.
Thankfully.
That go, they have, that's something that you have to talk about before you get married.
Yeah.
About how we're going to figure this out and stuff like that. So,
yep.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know how the debt conversation would go.
I mean, I feel like you would have to have that as soon as you got serious, as soon, or maybe not as soon. I don't really know the dating scene, but I feel like as soon as you wanted to make that commitment to be engaged or whatever, because it's, marriage is definitely an emotional and love thing, but it's also on paper, it's a business transaction.
100%.
And you talk credit score, you share credit scores. Essentially, they play into each other.
Yeah.
Especially if you're applying for a loan together, one person's credit score can affect yours a lot.
Oh, for sure.
But your debt, you take on each other's debt. I feel like you'd have to, even if it's student loans. I was just lucky. I went to San Diego State instead of going to USD, and it's just cheaper and just worked out that way. That's what I decided to do. Chelsea was lucky enough to be on the VA bill, but you definitely have to have the conversation.
You have to have the conversation, because that's another bill that you have to pay every single month, right? So if it's $50 a month, if it's $300 a month, if it's $3,000 a month, I mean, if you're a doctor and you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, that's another bill you have to pay. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something. My opinion is maybe a little bit different than others, but I think that aside from maybe student loans, I think debt is something that you should try to pay off before you get married.
That makes going clean.
Yeah.
Going we're starting fresh kind of thing.
We're starting fresh. And that's just my opinion. Only because if you're, to me, and this is kind of the business mindset, if you're going into something with thousands upon thousands of dollars of debt and you haven't tried to fix that first, that's just going to be something that is going to hurt the marriage down the road. Because, like we've talked about, everybody has their emotional bias. Everybody has what they want to kind of tie into. And then what? I
mean, if it's credit card debt and you haven't solved the problem.
And now you're doubling down on the credit card debt.
Yeah. And if you don't have an actual strategy to pay it off or whatever. Yeah. It's just, it could just get worse.
There's exceptions to every rule, right? If you've got student loan debt, and you're a doctor and, you want to get married, but you have $200,000 in student loan debt. Well,
it's different.
You're probably going to be okay because you're probably bringing home more than enough to pay off that debt. Again, conversations and balance and being strategic about how you pay that bill.
Yeah.
But if it's credit card debt, if it's like a spending problem, if it's a shopping problem, if it's something that is going to take a little bit of time to figure out, you figure that out first.
Yeah.
Because, man, that's just, I don't know, at least with Ryan and I, it's very difficult to say, like, you can't buy this.
Right.
Like, I can't tell her that, and she can't tell me that because our personalities are going to be like, well, now I want to buy it because you're telling me I can't. And then, again, you go down that rabbit hole.
And that just gets worse because, at least for myself, I know, and Chelsea doesn't tell me not to buy things, but she gives me suggestions and same kind of thing. But I could easily justify buying almost anything to myself.
Yeah.
But I'm also very impulsive.
Right.
So I'll return a lot of stuff because I'll be like, I really didn't need that.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah, 100%. But it's hard. It's definitely hard because we work hard. We invest. We've earned this money, and it's easy to, at least with my kind of personality, to just be like, I deserve this.
Right.
And sometimes it takes, just a different perspective or stepping back yourself to be like, I didn't need that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the next piece is if you're married, I get this question a lot. Like, if you're married, do you have shared bank accounts or do you keep everything separate? And so that's a huge thing. And, I think whatever you decide is your decision.
We're
right?
separate.
And talking about it.
Yeah.
Ryan and I we have separate bank accounts, but like I said, we use everything on a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And so it essentially comes out of one account. It's coming from one.
Right. We have separate accounts too.
Yeah. But it's, for me, I don't think there's a right answer to that. I think it whatever works for you. I think if you're going to have shared accounts, that's even more communication because, like we said, most of America is working on, month to month finances. And so if one person makes the wrong call at any point, that could ruin your month.
Yeah. Even just getting into the real specifics of credit card versus debit card.
Yeah.
I like to use a credit card just, this is going down a rabbit hole, but I like to use a credit card because it's protection of your money. Let's say you need to dispute a charge or anything.
Right.
Your debit card. Also, if someone steals your debit card and takes cash out, the bank doesn't necessarily have to give that back to you. With a credit card, if someone steals your credit card, they just take the charges off.
Yeah. And every credit card company is different, but I've had charges that I've tried to dispute with the credit card, and each credit card company that I work with, if I dispute it, it's same minute, real time, the money's right back on the account.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll figure it out on the back end. But
do an investigation or whatever.
Yeah, but the money's right back.
Yeah.
And so then I don't have to worry about it. It's no skin off my back. I don't have to think about it. It's done. I'll get a notification later with any additional information that's needed from me or, so on and so forth. But it's definitely not something that I worry about. And it's not digging into my finances.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan got her wallet stolen almost a year ago, and they took the debit card. They took, they made charges on the debit card, and luckily enough, she got everything back. But it took time.
It's a little more challenging.
Yeah, it took 2 weeks, 3 weeks just to get it back.
They say you're not supposed to keep your debit card on you.
Yeah, I do,
no.
But I keep everything on me.
You got money to lose.
Yeah, right. So, oh man, the next thing is power plays and who's in charge, who's the breadwinner. I don't think we have a problem with that, but I think it's definitely something that I hear a lot from other people saying oh man, I make the money, so I get to decide what's going on.
That's all bad.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. So obviously it comes down to communication. You got to work with each other.
Yep.
to know where your spending is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, no matter what, I think we've always come down to just the conversation.
Yeah. Conversation. Don't buy it on your credit card if you can't afford it.
If you can't afford it. And if you're in a pinch and you can only pay off 50% of the card in 1 month, just make sure the next month you're paying it all off. I mean, that kind of buys you a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
You might pay a little bit of interest, like depending on how much you
find a card with like a 0%.
Yeah,
there's strategy.
There's definitely strategy, but don't overextend yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen too many people go down $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of credit card debt. And
there's no coming back.
It's so difficult, So don't overextend. But
yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah.
One other quick tip is you can add like an authorized user to your credit card if you have one. And then that's like if someone has no credit, typically that's like a bad thing.
Yeah.
But no credit's like worse than bad credit essentially, but
it is.
Perfect timing. But that's another tip, but we'll get into more specifics later.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.